we wanted to talk about, whether the whole thing can be solved only by innovation, or whether we still do need some politics when we work on climate change and all these issues. And we can discuss it among the lunch break and whatever. But as I said, I have some very, very interesting people here on stage, and I want to introduce them to you, and I want to have their opinion. And one of them, I don't have to introduce anymore, because that's Frischmann. You saw him before, and you have another opportunity to meet him tomorrow in the afternoon at our Drawdown Europe event. So Chet, you have lots of experience in that kind of field as well. Are you satisfied with what politicians are doing? And are you satisfied with how far we are with innovation? And what can we do? How much policy do we still need?
Well, I think there's definitely a significant role for policy, both at the national level, but as well thinking about policy at municipal and subnational scales. I think as Johannes mentioned earlier, the thing that's going to drive the adoption of energy transition, and actually all solutions that can affect drawdown, which is the reversing of global warming, the policy mechanism to do so is a carbon price signal, an effective one. A carbon tax, for example. But short of a higher power, initiating that on a global scale, we really need to look at how these policies can be affected at subnational scales, at local communities, municipalities. We can't be relying upon global scale policy issues or financial mechanisms to solve this problem. We really need to be thinking about local.
Yeah, well, that pretty much connects to what Johannes Thijssen told us in his speech just a few minutes ago. The second here on this panel is Matthias Taft. You're not in the program because you jumped in for Danny Kennedy. You couldn't come. Thank you very much. He, by the way, is part of the jury and one of the big partners here of our team. He's CEO of BayWa Renewable Energy. And that belongs to BayWa, which is a pretty old company, huh? It's 1923 or so.
Yeah, we were founded in 1923.
Okay, and the very interesting thing is that you joined the board 3 years ago, as far as I know, and you're in charge of renewable energy, but also of conventional energy.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so what is, and you heard what Johannes said, and you know everything about the German and European discussion. So what is your view on politicians here? And are they going fast enough, or do you think you don't need them anymore? Can you go alone with all the projects you run?
Yeah, let me first make 2 comments on how we are organized. So the renewables are really concentrated on the electricity market. With the conventional energy, we are more dedicated to heat and mobility, just to make that clear. Yeah, let me comment on the keynote of Dr. Thijssen, and I agree with a lot of things, but as my colleague said here, I think we have to do more, and especially I would really love to have a carbon emission system in place which really works, because this would help to bring it in the right direction. But we have to acknowledge that it's quite hard to come to a conclusion, to an unanimous conclusion here in Europe. So by that, I really would appreciate if the German government come to a conclusion to phase out coal as soon as possible, because by that we can regain credibility. So that's something I think would be very helpful and crucial to the overall story. Then let me make another point. So I'm not really doubt about that the energy transition will come. It's just a matter how fast it's going to happen, and are we able to fulfill the 2-degree target, the 3 or 4. So, and as fast as we are, as better as it is for the world. So I think that's something we should have in mind, and there is no alternative. So we have to rely on renewables, and it's just a question, a matter how fast we are. And
but you have lots of innovation on board, and you have very much contact with innovative people.
Yeah.
And well, it is important that politicians make decisions so that your innovations can get forward.
Sure. On one side, we need a legal framework. Without that, we cannot act. But I give you 2 examples why I think that the economy itself has enough power and innovation to drive it by its own. So first of all, we are now realizing the first subsidized subsidized free project PV power plant in Spain. It's not residential, it's a utility scale project with 170 megawatt without any subsidies, with a corporate PPA with Stadtkraft. And that's innovative because we are on our LCOE level of less than 30 euros per megawatt hours, and we do not need any support anymore. So we would like to have a level playing field. That's good enough, and then we are there where we want to be. Second, I see a big chance in technologies, especially when we talk about the peer-to-peer market for corporate, industrial, commercial partners. Here I have in mind that we can shortcut the traditional energy traders by delivering green electricity to the big corporates, industries in the market. And we have already some projects there. That's very exciting. And that's the way how we want to manage that. And for sure, you're right. We need at least a certain framework, but less is better than more. So that's our view on that.
Well, thank you very much for the moment. Now let me go not to you. I'm sorry. Normally I start with the lady, but this time not. It's okay. Our third panelist here is Alberto Carillo Pineda, Director of Science-Based Targets and Renewable Energy at CDP. CDP runs a global disclosure system that helps companies, cities, states and regions to measure and manage their environmental impacts. And as far as I know, you have tons of data from companies and all these actors about their activities. And tell us a little bit more about this, because this seems to be very much bottom-up driven in the whole process.
Yeah, thank you very much. So CDP for the past 15 years has been collecting data, especially from non-state actors, starting with businesses, with the idea of bringing transparency and scrutiny into what companies are doing. And then we started also collecting data from other non-state actors like cities and now states and regions. And today we have the most comprehensive database in terms of what all these actors are doing in terms of managing their impact, their climate impact, and also impact on water and forests. And I would say that's only the basis, because of course what we're trying to do is to go from disclosure to action. And then, I think what we're seeing today is, of course, especially since the Paris Agreement, unprecedented level of action. We see now many of the largest companies, for instance, already reducing emissions, procuring or producing renewable electricity. Most companies have emission reduction targets in place, and many of these targets are not yet consistent with the goals that we have set in the Paris Agreement. But it shows, I would say, the level of action that is happening beyond what states are doing, I would say, and I would say supporting the goal that we have at the global level.
I think it's extremely interesting what you're doing at CDP, but all your partners and companies and cities and whatever you are working with, why are they doing that? Do they have to do that, or do they do it for PR, or why do they work with you? Are they really convinced that it's important?
So I think I like to see it as a hierarchy of motivations, especially for businesses. Similar to the hierarchy of needs that we have in the Maslow pyramid. I think some do it because there's risks and there's opportunities behind this energy transition, and many are taking action just because of those risks and those opportunities. I think a good example is, for instance, what many investors are doing in terms of moving away from coal. They see a risk there, and that's enough for them to take action. But also what many people here, for instance, are doing in terms of technology and innovation is just an opportunity, and that's good enough driver. I think the second level is policy and regulation. Many do it either because there's already strong policy frameworks, or I would say enough policy signals. And I think that also motivates change across many actors. I think the third level is probably meeting expectations from customers, from investors. That's a very important one. and from other peers in the sector, and yeah, I would say from
So
consumers
it's
in general.
hunting the opportunities somehow.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, Alberto. But let me just
Yeah,
bring our fourth person here into the game. It's Zierul, and she's Senior Director of Public Policy at ChargePoint. So you're probably the youngest company here on board.
We were founded in 2007, so
2007? Well,
startup.
he's younger then.
It's
Okay.
not really
Anyway,
the rightest word anymore.
I know that, but ChargePoint, both the world's largest and most open EV charging network with more than 46,000. That's a huge number. Total charging spots across the globe. Well, give us a little bit of first a better idea of what you really do for a moment, and then we'll get back to you with a question.
Okay. Yeah, from a customer perspective, we serve charging wherever and whenever. So if you're at home and you use a wall box produced by ChargePoint, then you take your app that we provide for free and let yourself be routed to a station. So en route charging on highways or at supermarkets, even for electric buses, which I think is quite exciting, and trucks, we provide high-power charging. And all this is backed by cloud services so that you can predict if the charger is available. You can reserve it or create a wait list for employees. And that's where we're further experimenting with.
Why are people joining your network? Why you?
You simply want it to work, and not this array of heterogeneous RFID cards and wall boxes and chaos that is persistent in some markets. You want it easy and really well working from a customer view.
I mean, do you have the impression that there are already many enough customers out there? Because I mean, he said it's a customer stupid, and Johannes Theissen, I think he's right actually. Is there enough bottom-up power to give a real chance for companies like you, or do we need to put more pressure from the top to the customers to really use your services?
It's always both. It's policy and market. I think, especially in Germany, Germany is a business car market. So we see a lot of B2B customers and fleets, be it healthcare services or employer fleets that can and are already electrified and where the business case is sustainable. And then, of course, you see a lot of drivers on city level, diesel bans, etc., really driving this shift towards e-mobility. The case is a bit different in every country. Some are really subsidizing battery electric vehicles more, others the transition model, the plug-in hybrid electric vehicles. So that is different, but I'm very persuaded that through fleets and workplace, we will get Germany up to speed to achieve that hockey stick curve that everybody is drawing for 2020 or 2025 to reach its million target.
Well, okay. Well, let me just make a little quick second round before we come to the pitches. I hope that's okay for you. And let me start again with you, Chad. Well, the reason why we ask these questions, do we still need politics, is also because in some countries, I don't want to name one, maybe we cannot really count on politics at that time. And so then I hear many people, okay, the technologies are so far, they don't need politics anymore. They're getting cheaper and cheaper, and we have young people and using all that stuff. And you have so many projects, or you know about so many projects from all over the world who really contribute to reversing global warming, as you say. Do you have like an idea of how much politics is involved in their success stories? I mean, I know it's a difficult question, and we didn't speak about that before. Just an idea.
Well, I think that's a good question. I think politics is involved in every success of most of the projects across the solution sets that we look at. And of course, we look at 80 different existing solutions across 7 sectors. And so politics plays a role in many of those projects in terms of support and financial mechanisms and policy mechanisms to enable. But I think we have to think beyond just top-down, because there's a role of the top-down, there's a role of the bottom-up, but we also have to think of the middle-out, right? So how we make institutional change, and this is the role of institutions to take, to have a level of agency that takes the goal or commitment to an energy transition or to reversing global warming or to however we want to frame this. But there is a role for institutions themselves to play that's not just top-down or bottom-up. We have to have that middle-out approach, I think, as well.
Okay, and are these institutions aware enough of all the technological potential we have in the market already? What do you think?
There are many institutions in the middle. Yes, I think we are on a trajectory to achieve the goals. I mean, but we need to do this faster, I think, as Matthias was saying. We have a 10-year carbon budget that we're quickly running out of, and we need to make this transition very quickly.
Thank you, Jed. Alberto, I mean, same question to you. Do those politicians, the politicians, I don't know, I mean, I don't want to do any policy bashing here, actually, because I really know they have a tough job. I mean, there are many, many other questions, very important questions out there. But how can we help them? Do we need, how can we help them understanding what they can do in order to give more spirit to the bottom-up power of energy transition? Any ideas from your experience?
Yeah. So I think, first of all, I believe that we need policy because despite all the innovation and technological development, we are not seeing the change that we need at the pace that we need it. So I think that's a clear signal that more needs to be done, and that requires more action by all stakeholders, including governments. And I would say, I think much more is needed. At the same time, I think the energy transition will happen for sure. It's just whether it will happen at the right time and in the right time frame so that we don't exceed our current budget. And there's some sectors, I would say, where we don't have yet the policy frameworks that we need for action to happen. Like, for instance, carbon capture and storage that will probably be needed for some sectors where there are no other measures. So without government action, that will not happen.
Let me refer to something what happened yesterday very quickly. I just read it today that the international community decided on pretty tough targets for shipping for the boats. They have to reduce their carbon dioxide emissions by 50% until 2050. I mean, before that we had nothing. We had nothing, and everybody was expecting that to even grow. Now we have such a target, a fixed target. Well, now, do I have to go to all these companies? I mean, that should be a very big boost to all these companies offering those technologies. With your experience, what do you think? I mean, is that also an interesting market for you, or do you think such a decision will really help to get things done and help new companies in the market?
Yeah, the shipping market and logistic market is not ours, but I think it's absolutely helpful, and I really appreciate that we get this frame or this guidance from the politicians to get rid of these kind of CO2 emissions. So that's really crucial, and that's for that we need the policies of the governments to give us this framework and to give us a vision. And sometimes it sounds a little bit strange, and I want to give you an example how weird this is. When you look at the United States, they were able, although I have to say they have the highest emissions in tons per person, but they were able to reduce it from 20 tons to 16 tons. So that's by reducing coal and substituting that by shale gas. In Germany, and also we have in the United States, from our point of view, a strange energy policy, put it this way. In Germany, it's a little bit the other way around. So we are claiming that we are on top of the movement, but we were not able to reduce CO2 emissions hours in Greece. So that sounds strange, but apart from that, it's always helpful to have a positive guidance and vision. Then it helps everybody to work in the right direction.
Well, thank you very much. And Tina, maybe a too complicated question for you, but it really bothers me because we have all these top-down politic decisions when it comes to energy transition, especially in Germany. And then we have all this bottom-up movement, and I would consider you as being a bottom-up company somehow, because you really organize, bottom-up people with your network and so on. And what about infrastructure then? I mean, what happens if this bottom-up policy making is hitting the the top-down policy making is hitting the bottom-up ideas and market and technologies? Are we prepared enough? I mean, are you having concerns that maybe your business model, for example, comes to an end because we are not quick enough with infrastructure and so on?
No, I'm not concerned. So I like top-down targets. I agree with Johannes Theissen, who's, by the way, my ex-boss, so I buy into a strong
So when will
CO2
you buy
target.
E.ON? When will you buy E.ON then?
Well, so we need strong targets. The EU has a tendency to overdo targets a bit. We target for efficiency, for renewables, and for CO2, and then for all sectors. So less is more here. That would be my advice. And then we have sub-targets that actually help increase investor security. We have targets for at least in California, the zero emissions vehicle mandate, so binding targets for cars, electric vehicles, and that translates to infrastructure. Then we know, okay, they're really going to come, those cars. We can invest into infrastructure. Now, in terms of financial incentives, all those funds around in Europe and Germany and regional and even local level, that is a jungle I cope with on a daily basis. We have an incentive dashboard and we update that weekly, and even weekly is not enough right now. It's really raining money, even ministers here say, and we keep it updated with our customers who want consultancy from us, where to invest in which infrastructure, which funds can we get. So that is that's a bit chaotic, but in a good way, because right now we still need incentives. And then for a while, when I started with policy, I thought, okay, first a subsidy period, and then we merge into a self-sustainable market model. Now at ChargePoint, we started doing both. We of course applied for grants, and at the same time, the sales team was forced to come up with sustainable business models, like selling charging infrastructure, no subsidies, directly to companies such as Target, persuading the customer, yes, your client stays in the supermarket longer if we provide together a charging opportunity. So I think you have to do both to speed up at the same time.
Well, believe me, I would love to talk for hours with you guys, but because it's very, very interesting, and it's one of my favorite topics, actually. But I must say, now the stage is for the finalist startups, and that's all. I give the mic back to you. Thank you very much. Thanks all for listening, and well, now let's cheer the startups, okay? Thanks.